Hiya folks, Nella here with my orange cat and off-screen both of my pink-haired, pigtailed girls. This video though isn't about cats as much as my cats want to make it about them. And it isn't about my BGDs either. It's actually about one of my other dolly loves. Cat hair everywhere. One of my other dolly loves, and that is mod era or mod styled fashion dolls. I know I don't exactly seem necessarily the type, especially since I do not currently have any of those dolls. But it's kind of a cycle that I go through, and it's actually a cycle I've been going through since I was about 12 or 13. To give you a perspective, 13 is when I got into BGDs. And around the same time, I was actually also looking into fashion dolls, specifically vintage Barbies, and Dynamite Girls. Not Silkstone so much, I didn't really like. That's not really the styling I like. And also Tonner dolls, specifically the Wild Imagination dolls. However, I got into BGDs and I was kind of able to stick to BGDs, and I went like, this is what I want a doll to be for me. And I went like, if I try and do Pullips, which was another possibility, I was like, if I try to do Pullips or mod era Barbies or Dynamite Girls, as much as I enjoy looking at those pictures, I went like, no, I can't customize them with the same amount of ease. Now, I can't make them mine as much as I do enjoy the look of them. But the cycle is that I end up looking at 1/6 scale fashion dolls and playline dolls more, and I start seeing more the customizing side of it, and then I start wanting to get one of my own, and then I resist and go, no, I'm sticking to BGDs, and then it kind of subsides for another year. Well, I'm fully in that cycle right now. I am looking at Pullips, and I'm looking at now the Pullips Make It Your Own line, which are made to be customized. It's the base models. I'm also looking at Blythe, and I'm looking at a couple of collectors that do vintage fashion dolls and action figures, but they also hybrid them and repaint them, and I'm going, oh, that is so cool! I want to do that! And so far I am still managing to resist. But I thought I'd share this with all of you because you may get the impression that BGDs are the only dolls I care for, but that is absolutely not true. I love all kinds of dolls. I actually grew up with Groovy Girls and Raggedy Ann and cloth dolls. Actually, mainly cloth dolls. I had some then current Barbies, so from the late 80s to 90s. But I didn't really like any of them, except for I had one that was incredibly dark skinned, and I just thought she was absolutely stunning. And I also had a Gymnastics Stacy. Now, you weren't a child of the 90s. Stacy was Barbie's little sister around, she was about 11 years old. At least that's what that was always the impression I got. Because during the 90s there was, like, Skipper, like, wasn't there. I think Skipper was a teenager, so she didn't appear in the line that much in the 90s. And then there was Stacy, who was a tween, and then there was Kelly, who is a 5-year-old around, something like that, who was a much smaller child. And there actually was a little baby Christy, I think it was. But she was only in a few lines. Anyway, the only Barbie I had as a kid that I loved, and I'm using Barbie as a coverall term of any of the Barbie line dolls, was this gymnastic Stacy. And I actually kept on to her until I was about 12. I actually kept on to her. But I ended up giving her away in the end. And I kind of wish that I hadn't, because she was just so cool. I'll put a link in the description box to a commercial for Gymnastic Stacy. Basically, she was jointed. She actually had a 3-part torso. She had jointed knees. I don't remember if they were hinged or not, but I do remember that her torso joint, of which there's the top half, and then there was a ball, and then there was the lower half. And her wrist joints and her feet joints were combination ball and hinge joints. And she had this awesome, incredibly long, thick, braided ponytail. I think the reason why I was given that doll, though I'm quite sure it was a hand-me-down, was because I actually was taking gymnastics as a child. And actually that doll did kind of shape some of my gymnastic moves, namely me pretending I had this massive ponytail to, like, whack off, enemies as I did spins and stuff. Yeah, I was that kid. So, anyway, but I also, because other than that Stacy, I didn't like any of the then current Barbies. Well, other than Stacy and the African-American friend that I had. However, I did play with vintage Barbies, specifically the ones that my mother and her sisters played with. There was one Ken, and I think it was Malibu Ken, because he had a really, really freaky smile, so I'm pretty sure that was Malibu Ken. And there was also PJ, and there was Steffi, and there wasn't a Midge, but there was a couple of Barbies, there was a few Tammys, there was one Skipper that I remember, and there was a whole bunch of clothing and sets from the 60s and the 70s. And I remember that there was the one Barbie there that every time I went, I always picked her up. And it didn't matter if I necessarily played with her, but, she was mine. And that was a mod Barbie with the youthful, very innocent face and the girlish figure, not the womanly figure, the girlish figure. Oh, and there was a hot pink and yellow, houndstooth, suit, essentially. I love that thing so much. So anyway, kind of, like I said, this is a cycle I go through. I kind of get a bit nostalgic about that. I start looking into fashion doll collectors and, repaints and modifications and customizations and hybridizing. And I start wanting to get one, especially now that I have so many patterns for that scale. I have a Dolly Dolly, and I have a Dolly Bird, and I have some FDQs, and what else do I have? Oh, and I have some oat dolls, so I have a lot of patterns for that scale. And the closest I actually have to that scale currently is Lottie here, and Finn. Lottie is actually wearing a outfit for life, by the way. Whoop. So right now I'm trying to resist that urge. Actually, right now I'm trying to resist the urge to buy a make-it-your-own Usul, and an Obitsu 23rd scale 23rd centimeter body. And then with those also trying to resist the urge to make like a awesome mod pull-up in the style of the mod Bobby that I loved so much. Especially if I can get my hand on one of those suits. Up until actually 2 years ago, my family still had all of those vintage Bobies. But at that point, now the youngest girl, me, is in her 20s, and we, as a family, decided that, okay, it was time to give that away, so we gave the whole set away, and I'm really wishing I had grabbed that suit, because it was just so amazing. But whatever, these things happen. So yes, that's my update. I'm in the midst of my fashion doll cycle. The good thing is, as many times as I've now been in this cycle, I've not actually given in and bought a vintage doll or a fashion doll or a Pullips or like any of those. I've managed to resist. And hopefully this time around I will also manage to resist, because as much as I love the idea of having one and the ease, frankly, of finding stuff in that scale, I love my BGD so much more. Anyway, that was all. Oh, and you might want to, check out the link to the commercial in the description box, because it is so 90s, but gosh, did I ever love that doll. Okay, bye everyone.